Hey, let's make a mess. All right, we're gonna get the bat wet here and I'm up there prepping some clay just out of frame. And there it is, nice big blob of clay. I'm putting it in the center of the bat as much as I can. And what I'm doing here is called coning up to try and center the clay. Yeah, I can see why people have a bit of a kink for this, but that is not this channel. Anyway, so now I am compressing the clay back down, and you can see if you look at the top of the clay, there's much less wobble than at the bottom. So I'm kind of just compressing it down and getting it all centered from the top down. I have a nice big blob here. There we go. And it's not quite as centered as I would like, so I'm going to bring it back up just a bit. Try and get it a little bit more centered for me there. The more centered you get it on the wheel, the easier it is to maintain and get nice height and, you know, just make everything nice and even. So I'm going to drop a hole here. I'm using even pressure with both of my thumbs to just kind of open the piece up a little bit. And this is where the piece can tend to go off center if you aren't careful and apply uneven pressure. So I'm trying to be very careful to apply even pressure with both of my thumbs. And you'll see here in just a second, I will stop the wheel and take my pin tool to check. There we go. And that was way too big. So yeah, I said to myself, all right, you coward. You gotta give it less of a bottom, or you're just wasting clay. So I am trying to open up and get a little bit more of that clay off the bottom, bring it up to the sides. And now I'm ready to start pulling. And you can see I'm kind of creating a little ridge around the bottom there. And what I'm gonna do is just gently pull that ridge up and into the sides. Just kind of cleaning off the visual noise of my wheel. Bloop, bloop, bloop. Lifting. And now I'm going to start using my sponge. I really, really like pulling walls with a sponge. I feel like it gives me more control and gives a more smooth surface and kind of reminds me that the outside hand is the one that's in control. So the fingers that I have on the inside of the pot are really just there to provide support so that as I'm pushing in with the sponge, the walls of the piece don't just collapse. And you'll kind of see I struggle a little bit getting some height here. I pull and I pull and I pull for a little bit, not getting a whole lot of height, which is a little frustrating, but I get it eventually. It's kind of a careful balancing act between how much you want to squeeze the clay and, you know, being gentle with it. So you kind of have to manhandle it a little bit, but if you apply too much pressure, it's just going to cave in on you. So there we go, pulling some more. I get a little frustrated here and I'm like, fine, I'll use my fingers, and then I go back to the sponge. I think here you can see the ridges are actually starting to move up a little bit more. You'll notice also that in between each step, I'm taking my sponge on the inside of the piece and just, compressing the bottom and getting rid of the excess clay. Here's where I'm consternating over why I'm not getting any height. And finally, I just get a little fed up with it and I just manhandle it. And I start to get a little bit more height here. It's a gradual process. A lot of this is patience. Patience is the key. It's meditative and good for you, though. At least it's good for me. I don't know. Some people might find it endlessly frustrating. There we go. Now we got a little bit of height going. All right, so now I need to recompress that rim because you can see I got a good little wobble going on the top there. I'm just smoothing some of that back down because I have a lot of clay on the top and a lot of clay on the bottom. And there's a little area in the middle there that's a little bit thin. So I wanted to move it down some, but now I'm just moving everything back up. What's really interesting about this, especially watching it back like this, is that the clay is really telling on my fingers. So you see that little divot in the middle? That is where I sort of, after that, I kind of let go of my pressure. I got a little afraid and I released some of the pressure. Yeah, so what you really want when you're pulling walls is to apply even pressure and go very slowly all the way up the piece. But, you know, it's okay. So what I'm doing right now with that little knife tool is I'm giving myself a flat edge to sort of belly the piece out and support it. So that way the walls of it are a little more even. And I'm trying to compress the rim a little bit more. And now I've got my rib, but as I learned later on doing this piece, I am holding the rib the wrong way for what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to belly the piece out and make it more rounded. And yeah, holding the rib with the curved side up is wrong. I need to hold it with the flat side up so that it does what I want it to do. But anyway, it's okay. I correct it later. And there was my elbow. All right, here you can see I'm trying to kind of compress my rim because I've got some wobbles in there. And yep, that's Chuck standing right there behind me. I called him in for a little bit of a consult here because Chuck is a little more skilled at throwing than I am. I say a little. Chuck is quite more skilled at throwing than I am. So yeah, I value his advice. No shame in that. And there's where he's correcting my holding of the rib. So we're gonna get the sides of the piece nice and wet because what I'm looking for here is a nice rounded sort of belly shape from this piece. So I'm just pushing on the inside and the rib is just there to provide support now. So it's kind of an interesting thing, right? When you're pulling up the walls, your outside hand is in charge. When you're shaping the piece, a lot of times your inside hand is in charge because it's the one that's giving the piece the shape. And then the opposite hand from that is just, supporting the clay, making sure it doesn't just fall apart on you. So there we go. So now I've got a nice sort of rounded belly on this piece. It's still a little wibbly, but it looks pretty good. And we're kind of debating on how to maybe collar this in or give it a rim so that it will take a lid. So I want to put a lid on this piece. So yeah, I'm just evening that out there and getting the excess moisture off the bottom, both on the inside and the outside. And now we're taking the calipers and measuring the inside of the lip of the piece, and that's so that I can size the lid appropriately. So now I just wire the piece off and take that bat insert off. And now I'm going to go and start throwing a lid for this piece here. So I'm going to prep this little small piece of clay here. This one's kind of fun because it goes quicker because it's much smaller. So little bitty little bitty blob of clay. It's fun. There we we go. So we're just same process, just coning it up and centering it, slowly bringing back down, centering from the top down. And you can see the wheel, I use a really high speed on the wheel in order to get the clay nice and centered. And you want to slow it down a lot when you're actually opening a piece up. But you know, when you're just centering it, the speed actually helps you quite a lot to get it nice and centered. So you can see there, like, you can tell the wheel is spinning, but if you look at the clay, it looks pretty still, and that's what you want. So now I'm just kind of playing with this little blob of clay here and making some ridges and just figuring out how I want this this lid for this piece to look. And measure, you know, every once in a while bring up the calipers just to make sure I'm making it the right size. There we go. And at this point, you know, it's pretty thick on the bottom, even though it's a small bit of clay. I've got a pretty good chunk of clay on the bottom there. So I'm just kind of opening it up a little bit more. And a lid really, I mean, depending on the shape that you're making a lid is just a tiny bowl. It's just a small bowl that fits on the top of your piece. That's all it is. So, yep, I'm just pulling the sides up same way I would for a bigger piece. There we go. Getting that excess moisture and compressing the bottom so we don't get any trapped moisture there. And looks right. That ridge looks right. So now this is an important step. I'm just taking the piece, it's well attached there. I'm just holding it upside down just to make sure that, yep, it looks like when it dries, it'll fit. It's important to throw the lid around the same time that you throw the piece, because as it shrinks, it's really hard to actually measure up the size of the lid once it's dry, because the clay shrinks as it dries. So now I'm just using this cool little foot tool to create this rounded shape on the bottom. And yeah, I'm really, really happy with it. How this little lid came out here. So I'll be trimming these pieces today, hopefully. I checked on them this morning. They're still very wet, but hopefully they'll be dried out enough to where I can trim them later on this afternoon. And then we'll see how our little lidded jar looks. But yeah, this was a fun one to throw. I'm just rechecking, making sure that all my dorking around with it didn't affect it too badly. Wiring it off, and we're done. Thanks for watching.